24.
How many are you currently having at your house?
Chair, excuse me, when's
Depends on the day.
Let me
Usually
check
this
real quick.
time
Okay.
this is 2.
It might be stuck, I don't know.
It's 5. That's usually when the parents are there.
So you all know that, started fast.
Not working?
No, it is. Sorry,
So what does that say, no stream detected?
Oh.
Because you haven't connected in yet? Mine doesn't even say
Here.
that.
No, you need to turn yours
Do I
on.
have to turn it on too? Do I have to do this too?
There you go. There you go.
Oh my goodness. Stand and hold it.
What's going on?
Is it broke?
That cord seems to have a.
Yes, you know.
Good to start.
Are we good?
XTE.
Okay, looks like we're live. Good evening. Would like to welcome everyone out to our 6 p.m. Planning Commission meeting for Riverdale City for Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. We have our commissioners present, with the exception of Commissioner Herman and Commissioner Noland. Commissioner Noland is excused, but we're missing Commissioner Herman. We would now open for public comment, item B of our agenda. And this is an opportunity to address the Planning Commission for items aside from those that are scheduled and outlined in our agenda tonight. I don't know if we have any public comment to be presented at this time, but seeing none, we will next proceed to item C, presentation and reports, community development update. Mr. Cooper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Happy belated Mother's Day to the mothers among us. Hope you had a great weekend. So a couple of things that are progressing around town. You've probably seen up on the hillside the America First project. They're setting block. They're done with the piling project, and they're setting block, which will be the essence of the retainage system. They're gray now. I understand that they'll be stained a tan color, so they're a bit stark, and they'll get pretty tall. So it'll be nice for them to kind of blend into the hillside with the tan color. Trader Joe's is progressing on the interior and some of the shell work. They haven't cut the door, the storefront in the face of the building yet, but that's coming soon. So that's going well. We expect Panera Bread to be done at the end of July. So that's the site work is commencing now. They've got their retaining wall in the back done. They're finishing up the interior, so that'll be finished here shortly. We enjoyed, as you probably know, the grand opening for the DXL and the Good Vets. So thanks to those of you who came. We're seeing progress at Coleman View. A number of homes have seems like they've just popped out of the ground. A new one every day. I don't know of any sales. Maybe you know.
I haven't heard any sales on that, but I'm sure it's in the makings.
Yeah. They've got some interesting price wars happening, which you would expect between two builders. So that'll be fun to see how that plays out. We are seeing some new permits come in for homes, and mostly what's been built there are 2 stories. We're seeing Ramblers now, with basements. So a different type of a product there's a little bit cheaper, as I understand it as well. So that's fun. And the Riverdale townhomes are should be in the framing stage here pretty quickly over behind the RC Willie. So you'll see those get vertical pretty quickly here as well. And that's about most of the fun activity.
Mission Barbecue, when are they?
I don't know of a date. It seems they're going slower than I anticipated, but that's just me. I don't know what their construction schedule looks like.
Okay.
The property for the trailer house over here, is it still on hold because of the parking problems?
Parking for the trailer house.
The trailer house is what we tore down.
Oh,
Leslie's
Leslie's, yes. Yes, we're still working out some parking concerns that the council has. We did have a meeting with them, was it last week, Michelle? Last meeting? Anyway, so we presented the site plan reapproval. As you might recall, this was action was taken by you all previously, but then I came back to you and said that that I misunderstood the parking requirement change, and so I expressed that to the council, that had you known that the parking was different at the time that you reapproved it, that you likely might not have. So I gave that information to them. They tabled it, and so we're doing some more investigation on how the site plan might change to accommodate more parking, or maybe some language in the text to allow the council to reapprove a site plan in different ways. So it may come back to you again. I'm not quite sure what the process is yet.
What was your tabling reason?
Just to do some additional analysis and investigation. So it's the project that I can't say never dies because it's never been born.
Okay, all right, thank you for that update. Next would be our item D, consent items, consideration of meeting minutes from April 8th, 2025 for both the work session and the regular meeting. Commissioners, were there any items that needed to be addressed or amended on those minutes? If none, then a motion would be in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Next is item E, action items, consideration to set a public hearing for minor text amendments to Riverdale City Code Title 10, Chapter 8, Agricultural Zones A1, A2. Mr. Cooper, please, if you'd explain.
Thank you. As I mentioned in the work session, we're just looking at the A1, A2 zones now in preparation for what our general plan requires of us, and that is to evolve some of our existing zones into the zones that are represented on our future land use map. And so in the process of doing that, I was looking at A1, and there are some confusing elements in that code that can be cleaned up prior to any major changes on the zoning map or in the general plan or anything like that. So what we'll be discussing in the public hearing is just a number of changes that I'll be proposing to permitted uses and conditional uses, as well as just redefining the purpose to make it more understandable and in line with the intended purpose, which is agricultural and farming uses.
Okay. And so we'll have all of that information with the text changes for consideration when we have the public hearing. So any questions for Mr. Cooper? Okay, then we would be looking for a motion for the public hearing.
And we'll need a date certain on that motion, and so I believe the earliest we can set it is for
May 27th.
Yep. So that'll give us enough time to do the proper noticing.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to open it up to public hearing on May 27th to discuss the agricultural code changes. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If none,
When it goes out like that, is it already rewritten for the public to see how it's gonna be changed, or is it just a public, will it be rewritten for them to see it before?
That's right. So the notice for the public hearing will happen, is it 10 or 14?
10.
It'll happen 10 days before the meeting is held. So if you approve the public hearing to be on the 27th, we'll notice the meeting 10 days before that. And then we'll do our typical notice on the Friday before the Tuesday of the packet. And that's where the proposed changes will be.
Okay.
okay, so we have the motion and the second to be acted upon. Michelle, if you would poll the commissioners.
Commissioner Polson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gothorpe? Sorry, Bothorpe. I don't know if that came out weird. Commissioner Anderson?
Yes?
Commissioner Henstra?
Yes.
Commissioner Nye?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes. We'll have that agenda item for our next meeting. Next would be item 2, which is a consideration to grant conditional use permit extension request for Joe's Car Connection located 5030 Freeway Park Drive. Mr. Cooper?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, so tonight's request is for a 6-month extension as allowed for by the Planning Commission under our current code. Ms. Chessa Shorten is here tonight as the representative of Joe's Car Connection. So if you have any questions that I can't answer, we can ask her to step up. You're all probably familiar with where this is at. This is at 5030 Freeway Park, so right at the corner of Freeway Park Drive and Ritter. In February 27th of 24, this was before the commission for the original conditional use permit, which was granted at that time. Those are good for a year under our code. I'll get to that code section in just a minute. During that discussion, if you look at the minutes which were attached to the transmittal, you'll see that there was some discussion about what would need to be done in terms of the site plan improvements, detention basins, rock walls, and some soil issues that existed. And so that was all meant to be addressed through the traditional site plan submission process, where a site plan is created, submitted, an application fee paid, and then reviewed by the city, and then responded to, approved, and then constructed prior to any business license issuance or anything like that. There has been some activities on the site. There has been some work done to build a retention area. You can kind of see in this picture here, there's that long kind of gray line in between the two parking lots. That I believe that's meant to be some form of retention. There has been some rock work in the back done. But again, none of these were formally submitted for review and approval. There was no approval granted for this work. And so it's just work that has been unauthorized and not inspected. We don't understand what the nature of the work was meant to solve. Calculations weren't present. There has been some information given to us in terms of a geotechnical report and some engineering, but it was inadequate for the submission. And so again, nothing's been submitted formally and completely or approved and inspected. So under Code 1019-8, there is an expiration set for conditional use permits for this reason, and it basically allows the commission to grant an extension after 1 year if there hasn't been any substantial action under the original conditional use permit. And given the fact that there was some work done on the site, you'll have to determine if it's substantial, given the fact that the work wasn't ever authorized or approved or inspected. So the action tonight, again, is a request for that 6-month extension. That would take us from the original expiration date of February 27, 2025 to August. And so that's what the extension would look like if you so choose. In getting the request from the applicant, Ms. Shorten, she mentioned that there was just some misunderstanding of the requirements. And so I thought I would list the interactions, at least that I've had with Joe's Car Connection, either with Joe himself or Ms. Shorten. I believe there has been interactions prior to this when Mr. Eggett was around, but I didn't list those because I have evidence of those things on my computer, but I wasn't here. So I'm showing you the correspondence or interactions that I've had with them since about January, when the initial office visit was made by Ms. Shorten trying to get this project going again. Since that time, we corresponded. We talked about all the requirements. They were listed. I believe I shared that email in the packet as well. But it wasn't until April that our code enforcement officer went to the site that got Joe to come in and to pay us a visit to try to figure out what needed to happen next. We gave him the same information again that was provided to Ms. Shorten back in January, but we haven't heard any activity since the April office visit. So from county tax records, I believe that Mr. Gracie purchased the property around 2020, and so this is a aerial of what the property looked like in 2020. So you can see that there already is starting to be activity there related to the sale of automobiles. 2021, a little less activity, but there still is some storage there. It's hard to tell from these pictures if there is active sales, but again, the use is related to the storage or sale of a vehicle. And so whether it's sitting there or being listed for sale, it's the same type of consideration. Here's 2022. Again, we're starting to see a little bit more activity. No work has been done as of yet in this picture relative to the site, mostly just the storage of cars. I believe there was some work done to the building during this time, and that was permitted. So we have no issues with anything related to the work done on the building, mostly the use and the site. And here is last year's picture. You can see now, as I mentioned before, there has been some work done at the bottom of that slope where the drainage area is. That's meant to be, I believe, a storage, stormwater storage facility. There's been some retainage done in the wall on the back. But again, none of this work meets code. None of the work has been permitted. And then there's some additional requirements that have not been addressed because the site plan was never submitted or approved, related to landscaping and lighting, striping of the parking lot, things like that. And so here's some pictures just as of the other day. You can see there on the bottom left, there's that stormwater facility that was trenched in and gravel put in. You can see the nature of the slope. The landscaping requirements have not been met, again, because there hasn't been a formal submission. But you can just see the nature of the use of the property now. Freeway Park Drive is being put back in with curb and gutter and sidewalk soon to follow. So there would be some landscaping requirements that would be associated with that work, but on the property owner's side. So after careful consideration and having myself being involved in this for a little, during my time that I've been here, a little over a year and a half, there just hasn't been, although we've met a number of times, there just hasn't been the adequate amount of attention given to the process that has been explained and re-explained in order to become a legal use and receive a business license. And so given that condition in that situation, I don't have any evidence that if this was extended, that there would be any additional attention given to this, especially in the short period of time, because the extension would only be granted, if granted, until August. And so it just doesn't seem reasonable to me, given the history of the site, that any significant improvement would be made between now and August sufficient for a business license and a legal use. And so with that, staff's recommending that the commission deny the extension request. But again, as always, this is your decision, and so your possible findings could be that of granting the extension to August 27th. You could agree with staff recommendation and deny it, or if you want to investigate this further, then you also may make a motion to table. And so with that, I'll return it back to the commission for any questions.
Okay, I have one question. Now, if I understand correctly, because there's a variety of things that the planning commission approves that doesn't necessarily need approval from the council. And this is one of those where the conditional use permit is granted by the planning commission. However, it is not reviewed or validated further.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, so tonight's action would be
So-
final.
So really, the clock started ticking February 17th or whatever it was when we
27th.
approved the conditional use initially of 24.
That's right. And Ms. Shorten did make the request for extension in January, even though we're just now hearing it tonight.
Okay.
I believe the request was made in time before the extension or before the original date expired. And so if you do choose to extend it, it would go from that February date to August.
Okay. And do you have any other questions before we invite Ms. Shorten up to, because clearly we want to hear from you as well, so.
So there has been a lot that has gone on, obviously. I was called in,
Could you just state, for our meeting record, could you state your name and your city of residence, please?
so my name is Chessa Shorten and I live in Syracuse, Utah.
Thank you.
Joe called me, we've worked together many, many years. He called me back in December and asked for help on this project. There is what he said is correct, but there is a lot that's happened behind the scenes that y'all aren't aware of, obviously. He did hire a crew to help with the drainage situation, and he did hire an engineer to do the survey, which was submitted at one time and approved at one time. The license was approved at one time, but it was out of order, and it needed to be rectified. And he asked me in December to come in and help, which I spoke to Mr. Cooper in January. From that time on, the person that did the work on it obviously did not follow the right protocol, and Joe was overwhelmed with the situation, and that's why he asked me to reach out to help, trying to get it done correctly so we could get this off the table and finish things up. There has not been any further construction because, as he stated, there's tons of construction out front there. It's almost impossible to move anything in or out of the driveway. So he hasn't pressed to move he's not selling any cars from that lot. There is some storage, obviously, there. He has another property in Roy. So it's under my understanding that Joe's wants to be in compliance, wants to get everything up and running so that he can follow through with what you want. We have talked to the engineer and the surveyor, and we've paid them a large amount of money to get the paperwork that you require. So there is some things going on behind the scene, but I can see how you feel like it's not moving fast enough. My intention is to get us in compliance as quickly as possible, followed by the information that Mr. Cooper has provided, and we're working to get that done.
So basically, let's see, so we're May, June, July, August, so that's 3 months. Do you reasonably see that can all be in compliance to where you can complete that in 3 months?
I think the engineering and the site survey, absolutely. I'm not sure what it's going to take to get the already constructed work to meet your guys' codes, but Joe's wants to make it happen. Like we're trying to make it happen. I don't know if we can force that contractor to do the things that you've requested, or I'm not sure what that will take, but the engineer said that he would make it happen. So, I mean, what we've been told at this point, we have to sign a check, right? Make it happen. That's what we're trying to get done.
You know what concerns me is there's a lot of misunderstandings.
Yes, sir.
Hearing both sides, and I appreciate your input, your comments, 100%. Because I like to hear both sides of the story.
Yes.
But I also have a big concern about activities being, the increase of vehicles that's on the lot. A lot of interaction with the city staff that seems like it was almost blown off and not getting back in a correspondence in a time frame that would make sense, that they would feel the way they feel, the staff. And I think the staff, in honesty, made an effort to reach out, say we need certain things to happen, and it never happened. And the code enforcement came, and a little activity was done after the code enforcement officer even enlightened Joe to what needs to happen to move forward. So you're saying that he's proactively involved and wants us to move forward, but yet I see a lot of inactivity since the time frame began.
Correct.
And so it's like two people butting heads with
Right.
nothing happening.
I understand that.
And with that, I'm concerned that, the city, I think, has an obligation to be in compliance with the laws for every business in the city.
Right.
And we can't make exceptions for one person and allow something to happen if it's not in compliance. Where I believe everything that Mr. Cooper said and the city staff has said has been neglected, which is a concern.
And I think prior to January, that I can't speak for what happened prior, why things were neglected or what happened. I can't speak for that. But since January, we've done every effort that we can. That's why he asked me to come on, is because he's like, I don't understand what they're asking. I don't understand what this means. I pay somebody to do something, it doesn't get done the way it's supposed to. So he felt overwhelmed, which is why he asked me to come be a liaison for him to expedite this and get this done.
Mr. Cooper, we had correspondence during that time frame with Joe, and he was clearly understanding, if I'm not mistaken, what the steps were to proceed.
Yeah, from my research, so what I showed you in the timeline here, really only started with me and Ms. Shorten in January. By that time, the conditional use permit would have been, the clock would have been ticking for almost a year. And so it's in that year period of time where I was here since March of 2024, so I would have been here for most of that time, there was zero discussion with staff on site plan submittal process, any of those kind of things. I believe that the work that was done, and maybe you can shed some light on this, the work that was done that comprises that stormwater retention in the wall, that was done in 2023, even prior to the conditional use permit. And so, as well as the storage of vehicles. And so there's been this long history, not just in the last year, because Ms. Shorten's correct, ever since she's been on board, there has been that activity that I've described. But since that April visit by our code officer, there wasn't any dialogue between us and Mr. Gracie. It was that point that kind of spurred him to come in himself. So that's kind of what's led to the recommendation from staff, is that since 2020, really, there's been a long history of working with Mr. Gracie to try to get the property in a legal compliant use, and there just hasn't been much evidence of that.
My understanding was he bought the property 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. Did he buy it before then?
Yeah, the county records show the transaction happening in 2020.
Oh.
And I think the aerials, our TV is just hating it. I think the aerials are consistent with that. So you can see that 2020, the trucks started to show up.
Okay.
Yep.
I was not aware of that.
Ms. Shorten, there was something that you said earlier that I'd like a little clarification on to make sure that I understood correctly. At one point, you said that the engineering report had been submitted and approved, and that a business license had been approved, but they
Yes.
were out of order. Could you explain that a little bit further? Because I understood that we hadn't seen any of that.
So when I came in January, I was confused on that as well. And there were some email correspondence that had gone on, and I'm not sure when Joe had came in originally. As I said, I came in January. And at that time, he informed me that we were looking for a site permit, we needed some licensing, and I found an approved, in the paperwork that Joe had given me, an approved business license that had been issued and the site survey that had been approved. Brandon did not, or Mr. Cooper did not have that information, so I provided it to him at that time. And that's when we discovered that it had been done out of order and it had been pulled back. And I believe at around that time, he was working with someone here at the city that he had spoken with. I do not know the name. I cannot remember.
Yeah, we do have a site plan from Gardner Engineering, but it's an existing conditions site plan. So it just shows the lot as is. It doesn't show proposed improvements that would be compliant to our code, and it doesn't follow the site plan submission checklist. So it was a survey done by Gardner. It wasn't submitted and it wasn't approved from our side, but it was created by Mr. Gracie. I've seen it. And then from what I understand about the business license, the reason why it was revoked is because it was found to be issued in error.
Yes, that's what they told me.
So the business license, for some reason, and maybe Michelle, I don't think she was even here back then, but I think it was issued erroneously, and once that was discovered, it was revoked.
Well, I think it was revoked after we brought it in. We told them, like, because we didn't have the right paperwork. And so when I had questioned it, that's when they said, oh, this needs to be revoked. And we have, it's the same engineering company, Gardner, I believe is the name of it. He should have contacted you already this month. If he hasn't, then I'll make sure that he does, because we spoke to him couple of weeks ago, and he said that he was calling you directly to handle the checklist. Sorry.
Does your engineer have a site plan that you guys are proposing to submit? with the
One was
changes?
already proposed. It just wasn't. That's what I have. I didn't bring it with me
Right, the
today.
prior one, but do you have a new one that will cover the renovations that need to happen?
Yes, it's supposed to cover everything that he spelled out for me, as well as I asked him to specifically work with him directly so that we could accommodate the checklist
But
that he
that was a couple
provided.
weeks ago that you.
No, we talked to him in January, but he confirmed a couple weeks ago, and we wrote him another check to make sure that
But we
that happened.
still haven't seen that.
That's what he just said. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I will be on the phone with him tomorrow, because that should be coming.
And Gardner is a good engineering firm that understands site plans. They do site plans. So it's not,
Head scratcher.
yeah, it's not something that they would need a lot of coaching on.
They assured me that they knew what they were doing and that they knew him personally. So
Do we have a date when we revoked that license? Do we have a date?
I don't have it. I don't know it.
Michelle,
When it was issued in error and when we revoked it?
I have some dates, like I said, I wasn't here either. The original business license for that address, origination date on it is 8/27/2020.
2020.
But that,
And then it would have been revoked after that, but before 2021.
So within a year, they revoked it. Is that what you're saying?
so approved 20,
'Cause it would have,
then, and revoked 21.
yeah,
So since 21, they've been operating without a license. Is this correct?
They're not operating at all at that location.
They're not selling any vehicles?
No.
Although there's a sign there that says for sale?
There's a sign on the building. There's no advertisement for that sign. There are some vehicles in the parking because he was under the impression that he could park with the conditional use permit, but there's no sales. There's not even staff on that property at all.
So what happens if, sorry, Wanda, go ahead.
So if one of the vehicles somebody wants to buy, you move it to Roy and sell it from there.
We have to, but he has not had any of the vehicles able to be up for sale, not all of them, because he could not get the cars on and off the property because of the construction. The vehicles that he deals with are more fleet vehicles, so it's not like you can just, I mean, if you have a small little space, you can't really get those big vans through there.
But
So
what would-
there's no business going on there at all.
So if I wanted to buy one of those fleet vehicles, what would I have to do?
Well, if you saw it, you'd have to call the Roy location and request that it be brought to Roy.
And then all the funding and expenses to buy that would go through the Roy City?
At this moment, yes. Which is why Joe's frustrated. He wants to work and live, and he lives in Riverdale. Like, the business should be in Riverdale, but we're not there yet.
So I appreciate the clarification on the business license. That tracks with this picture, meaning that if there was a license issued in 2020, that probably lends to the fact that we're seeing cars here, and then in 2021, less cars, so that might be a result of the revocation. But then in 2022, 23, the increase of cars has happened with the progress being either intermittent or not approved. So you can see between 22, no progress on the site, 23, you see some progress. So there was some work done. But again, I think the issue at hand is the fact that our codes are pretty clear in terms of our site plan approval process. Many people go through that process for lots of different types of businesses. And so to persist even between 22 and 25 now without the ability to see a proposed site plan that's consistent with our checklist, while the operation is still existing, those are the conflicts that we're trying to understand.
And not to make excuses or anything, I don't want to be insensitive with what you're saying, but part of, I don't think that we can say that I think the parking situation is a little bit more coincidental, not necessarily anything more than that. And there may be, COVID happened during all of that as well, so it's hard to speculate why he moved cars where, or what happened with business that way. Because I know COVID just about took him out of business completely.
Right. And unfortunately, without a legal use granted, either conditionally or permitted, and without that specifically, then even the storage of vehicles is a non-permitted activity. So that's been occurring since, let's call it 2021,
But
because
didn't he have a conditional use permit in 2024?
again, the conditional use permit, it does not allow for any activity to happen until the entire process. That's the beginning of the approval process. And if you go back to the minutes of that meeting, the commission made that specifically known to Mr. Gracie, that the conditional use was not authorization for the business. It was just the permission to have that use on that site. And so that was
But it said that he could have his cars parked on the lot.
the actual opposite. It said that it specifically did not allow for that use to exist unless it went through the process of permitting and licensing.
Oh, I think I
And I
misread
would-
that because I thought it did.
And I've attached those minutes. So if I'm incorrect, then you have them in your packet.
Yep. I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
Yeah, the commission emphasized the need to clarify that the permit does not authorize immediate business operations until all conditions are met. And so even the fact of having inventory present on the site.
I think I'll have to go back and I don't want to speak out of, I don't know I wasn't at that meeting, excuse me. But via the email correspondence, I thought at one point in time that there was permission to park the cars there, but not to run the business. And he has not ran the business there.
Brother Anderson, would you read the next sentence? I think the next sentence is very important.
For the motion?
It says, there were discussions about the difference between a condition.
Oh. Because
conditional.
before that, yeah, there were discussions about the differences between conditional use permit and a business license, clarifying that the permit is not a green light for immediate business operations. Concerns were raised about property issues such as detention basins, rock walls, and potential soil contamination, which need resolution before proceeding with the site plan and business license. But I was more concerned the emphasis that the permit doesn't authorize immediate business operations.
In other words, it's not a green light to go forward.
Right. And having the inventory there, because I've been past, my memory's foggy, but it seemed like vehicles for sale is somewhere on the building.
It says Joe Car Connection and truck sales on the building, the sign on the building.
Which represents that these vehicles are presented for sale at the Riverdale site, which basically means operating a business, whether they're sold in Roy or whether they're sold in Riverdale. They're advertised for sale for those vehicles in Riverdale. And that's, in my line of thinking, that's in violation with what we're looking for and with what's been requested.
How do we move forward? He wants to be a business owner here. This is something, I know that there's been a lot of muddy water. I get that, but that's why he called me, is he wants to move this forward. We want to be in compliance. How do we get there? It feels like there's, since I've started,
Sure.
it feels like
And you've
it's a
been put
whole
in a
lot of
difficult
blocks.
situation.
Yes, exactly. And so, yes, there's paperwork that needs to be done. There's engineers that need to be paid, it's not cheap. All of this is expensive.
Sure.
And Joe is out of a lot of money, and he's not making any money with this property here. He's a business owner in Riverdale, or homeowner, excuse me, and trying to be a business owner. And all what I'm being told and what seems to be is, let's get this done right and let's get it done now. And which is why I came in January, is to try to get it done before that permit expired. But unfortunately, it's a lot of hands that you have to work with, and feels like snail's pace sometimes.
It just seems like that there continues to be gaps
Correct.
in commitment and follow through, whether it's you or third parties or whatever, that these gaps continue to plague this proposal. And it's become a concern because when you look at the actions with what I can visibly observe, that's where I have concerns. And I'm speaking for myself, not for the commission, but
Of course.
at the same time, with what's been requested and a year has been provided, now we're asking, can we do this and complete this in 3 months?
Is there a compromise? Is there another option? What's the other option? If you deny the conditional use permit, what's the next option? How do we start over? Because it feels like and I don't want to speak for anybody, should he just leave? He doesn't want to do that, and he got angry with me when I said to do that. But, obviously we want to get it done. We want to do it right. It's not obvious. You've had the gauntlet. It's since January, we're trying to get it done.
Yeah, sure.
And I know we have to go backwards. Can he pay a fine and make it happen in 3 months? I'm not sure. I think he can. If the engineer does what they say they're going to do, I think it can be done. The question is, like you said, the irrigation. How do we make it follow your code? if you have someone that you work with that you want us to use, is that an option? Like,
And
I
we
think
can't,
Joe's
we can't
desperate at
direct
this
who
point.
who you conduct business with. I mean,
yeah, I'm grasping at straws.
Can we just, can we talk out the timeline to even see if it's feasible? Because the next step, if we extended this to August 27th, they still have to submit the site plan for approval. Is that the next step?
That's right. So a site plan would be required. And again, there has been engineering done, so they're not starting from scratch. But that's more of a existing conditions layout. So what that drawing would have to evolve into is a full-blown site plan that shows the improvements that Joe's able and willing to make on the site related to stormwater drainage, landscaping, detention, the number of parking stalls. We haven't even looked at that. We don't even know if there's enough parking stalls for the customers' employees. So there's a whole litany of things that goes into a site plan. We would review that. So if we received it today, it would take probably 14 days to review. That would be our comments back to the engineer if there are comments, and 99% of the time there are. Then that turnaround time back to us is out of our control. So however long it takes the engineer to get to us, you said that you talked to him in January. He's yet to get to us. So
I talked to him in January, and there was a question on like what the scope of work would be and the cost. So there was some negotiation that took place, and that was all settled in April.
And so once that whole process went, that could take probably, let's call it 2 months total. Then we would issue a site permit if there's any public improvements that are being made with curb, gutter, sidewalk, those kind of things. Then we would take a bond for those. And then they would do the work, however long that would take. I would think that if we issued a site permit before August, that in my mind would be significant work under the code. And so I'm not necessarily looking to have this entirely complete, but I do hesitate saying that because a site permit doesn't necessarily equate to completed project. And so how long does that linger? Site permits are only good for another year, so are we back into the same boat? So, and that's kind of the premise of my recommendation, is that there hasn't been that significant effort to lead me to believe that there is now at this crunch time that the required effort is going to be made. You asked what could be done. What needed to be done was listed out very specifically in January, and we've yet to see anything. And so
Well,
that's the process.
There has been correspondence, there has been visits, and you haven't seen the,
Fruits of that, yes.
yes.
That's
But
right.
it doesn't mean it's not the work is being done, you just haven't got to see it yet.
And so I imagine that with all of the site plan, all the code would require of this site, it would be not only have a significant or a decent cost for the design prep, having the engineer design the plans in accordance to our review, but then the actual work would pose a significant cost as well in terms of the stormwater and the landscaping and the parking and the frontage and all of those things. And so that's the kind of commitment that we've yet to see in terms of that investment that's required to get the site compliant.
So, Mr. Cooper, if I understand what you're just saying here, would it make sense from Joe's and representative, if we were to scrub what's happened in the past, start fresh from zero, deny this right now, and pick up what they have done on a brand new deadline and a date, and forget what he said, she said, what didn't happen since 2020, would it make more sense to go forward with a clean slate and pick up and make sure they understand the exact steps and dates and times to comply?
Yes, so the only option that you have to do that is within the extension period. So if you look at the actual code language, it says the commission may grant a maximum of 6 months. And so if you wanted to provide that reset, then that 6-month extension would happen from February until August, right? The original deadline to the 6-month mark. And I suppose you could make it conditional. Let me think that through. So you can set conditions on that extension, meaning that if there isn't a complete site plan package submitted by X date, then the condition is waived or voided. That gets a little bit messier to track and to follow through with, but certainly that's your purview to put conditions on your extension. To avoid having the extension happen and then us getting to a site plan situation where that lingers now, because at that point, the use has already been granted conditionally without any other reservations. Does that make sense?
Okay, clarify to me. A site plan, they should submit a site plan before they start all this work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they have not done that.
That's correct. That's correct.
They've been trying to do all this work without submitting a site plan. Is that correct?
There was a site plan submitted at one point in time, but it was based, I think, provisionally on what is already existing there. There has not been a new site plan given based on the work that has currently been done.
Since the conditional use permit was granted back in February of 2024, no site plan has been submitted since then. Is
There
that
was
correct?
one at that time, yes. We are trying to get the new one to you. That's what's being done now.
But that site plan didn't incorporate any improvements. It was just an as-is.
It has some, but it wasn't the right way. It
Yeah, so
wasn't correct.
when we say site plan, it's a technical term defined in our code. So the site plan is the proposed improvements that follows a checklist that is ideally compliant with our code. That's why a site plan is drafted.
And the checklist was not done. The plan was submitted, but the checklist was not done.
Well, the plan didn't reflect the proposed improvements. So had it been, let's assume that it was formally submitted and paid for. That's the other part of a complete package, is that you have the site plan with the full checklist and the application fee paid. So assuming that had been done at any point in time, then it would have been rejected immediately because it didn't comply at all.
But it didn't. That's another part that there was. So the site plan was committed, the application was paid. It was, all that was done.
I don't have record of an application fee paid for the site plan.
I submitted it when I came in January. I had the check, the copy of the cleared check with me.
That was
done.
that was the $75 CUP.
There was the payment of that and the business permit and the application. That was all in there.
Okay, I mean, I could stand corrected. I looked and I didn't see any record of that, because usually in order to take that payment, they associate it with a plan in our system, and there was none of that. And so they wouldn't know where to credit that payment to. So I'll check again, but I don't have any record of
I
that.
have an email with the plan attached to the email and the receipt that was forwarded in January of the payments.
Okay, I'll double check.
Yeah. And again,
I'm not
I'm
sure.
coming in late
Yeah.
in the game. I understand. This is just my understanding of what the
If
documentation
that was
I
if that
saw.
happened, it happened completely outside of our normal process,
Of
because, and so it doesn't make sense.
It feels like a lot has gone outside of normal process on all parts, unfortunately, and a few different people too. Trying to play catch up was definitely a challenge.
Do you remember the amount?
Now off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But I do remember, I think I sent that in late January, early February. And it was the same time frame that I submitted the liaison paperwork with the notary signed wrong. I
So that would have been
regret
this year. That would have been to me, and I have no recollection of
It
receiving
was submitted through email. I came here with the.
like a receipt of previous payment or the
Yeah.
actual payment.
It was the receipt of the payment with the plans. It was emailed at that time frame. But I could be misunderstanding. I apologize.
So in February of 2024, when the conditional use was applied for, there was a $75 fee just for the conditional use.
Correct.
And that also required not a site plan, but drawing,
Plan, yes.
basically.
Correct.
So that's all I've seen.
There was the paperwork from Granger that he submitted, that went through an email. I don't know who the person was. I apologize.
Granger's the
engineer.
geotechnical engineer.
Correct. And so that paperwork was submitted along with some, I don't know the word, I apologize. There, another type of geo testing was done on a neighboring property that was kind of part of it. And then, when I came in February, all that paperwork was kind of together with a whole bunch of receipts and a whole bunch of applications. Well, January, excuse me. So when I came in, they said, we need this and this and this and this. And so I just pulled the emails. I mean, I'm looking for a needle in a haystack, and just forwarded them. And that was in late January, February, early February.
I'll check
It was from the paperwork included the site plan from Granger.
Yeah, so I recall seeing that. I'll check in those emails, but where I checked for payment was in our accounting system.
Oh yeah, I don't have any.
Yeah, and so that's where they wouldn't even know where to code that payment to, because there was actual no site plan.
Yeah, I just had an application with a copy of a cleared check attached to it that I submitted with the rest of those drawings that I received.
Okay. Mystery.
It is.
Okay.
I want to clarify me. We approved the conditional permit
Mm-hmm.
a year, February, without a site plan?
That's normal.
That's normal.
That's normal. Because a site plan is site development standards. A conditional use permit regulates the use. So you can be granted a conditional use permit for the use, but it's not, as mentioned in the minutes of the commission, it's not actionable until you go through the process to obtain a business license. And in this case, it required site improvements.
So when we approved that, immediately we should have said, now we need a site plan now.
Or within the year.
In the year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Joe thought that had been done because Granger submitted site plans, but it wasn't up to the checklist. So there was stuff that came through, it just wasn't right.
And Mr. Cooper, you'll check on that? To see if there really is a site plan out there?
There is not a site plan that I've been given. There's a engineered drawing of the existing conditions, but it's not a site plan, nor does it meet our site plan submission requirements.
So does he think that's a site plan?
Joe thought that was a site plan.
Sounds like it.
Yes.
So it's a miscommunication here. He thought it was, and we said it's not.
Yes.
But that was explained to him from my reading of Mike Eggett's emails. That was the discourse not from February on. It was prior to that, because I was here in March of 24, and I've never spoken to Mr. Gracie or Ms. Shorten until January, and then
Yes,
April.
I came in January.
And so for the entire year of 24, there is no action, dialogue, submission, anything.
But your correspondence, Mr. Eggett's correspondence was explained at that time,
Yeah.
and it made clear at that time what had to happen.
Right. There was some coaching on what was required and what wasn't. I think that's what led to the geotech. You know, some of this conversation, if I understand it right, this is before both of our times, is that Mr. Eggett would explain certain things to Mr. Gracie, and he would just ship some of those things over in an email without going through the formal process. Mike would say, well, I need this to be put into an application. There's a fee, there's a process. And it just was never pushed into that. There has been some dialogue and pushback about the cost of it all. I think that, if I have to speculate, was associated with some of the delay, because to do a proper site plan with proper engineering there is a decent cost to that kind of thing. And so Mr. Gracie, from what I have read, was a little hesitant to go through the necessary cost of all of that.
It was like up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is,
He knew at that point what he was facing.
well, I can't attest to what he knew or did not know, but my understanding from his correspondence to me was He needed to talk to the engineer, get these geo tracks done, get this drawings done. He hired Granger to do that, and then hired a contractor, paid a heck of a lot of money, and it wasn't right. And that's what he was frustrated with. And then to amend it, it's like, well, it's another 20 grand. Like, it's a lot of money. And there's a lot of those a lots. And then that's when I stepped in. He just said, he felt like he was just paying hand over fist to one person after another that was doing it wrong because they weren't including Riverdale City in what they were doing. And he thought they were. He's like, if you pay a contractor to buy a permit and do the work, you assume they bought the permit and did the work.
So with this, back to my question again, would it make sense to start fresh and make it very clear with steps and details and timelines going forward? Because of what's happened, there's too many broken holes and miscommunications and things of this nature. Would it be quicker for them to pick up where it currently stands now, or to start over fresh with clear directions and timeframes?
Well, I believe we started over fresh with clear timeframes in January when Ms. Shorten came and was hired on, and we gave her the clear process. And that was repeated to Mr. Gracie in April. And so if you feel like that by doing that again, that a different response would happen, then that's up to you based on what you've learned tonight.
No.
But we would still have, the deadline would still be
Right.
August 27th
Right.
of this year.
And again, I would say for site plan approval, not necessarily completion of construction, but I hesitate in saying that because site plans are only good for a year. And so if conditional use was granted, a site plan approval was granted.
It just seems like it's leapfrogging
Yeah.
issues and kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
So when you say a site plan is only good for a year, so if the construction's not done and completed, then the site plan is no longer valid?
That's right.
But the site
Not-
plan doesn't have anything to do with the construction. I mean, the construction that's already been done.
The construction that's been done is invalid in terms of our eyes because we never saw the engineering behind it. It was never properly approved, and it was never inspected. And so what's been done on site is really of no bearing to what the proper improvements are required to be. Now they could, right? If you had the necessary information provided to our engineers and they could go back and look at it and determine if the calculations are correct and if the site flows and if all the requirements are made, then they could say, yes, those improvements are valid. But at this point, those improvements are not valid. There's no way for us to substantiate their correctness.
Does that mean he has to dig it all up and start over?
Not necessarily. It means that it needs to be verified by the engineering, which is a
Which is
part of
what's
this
being done.
site plan submission, inspected to determine if what was proposed and built. So it's kind of a retroactive approval. But
It sounds like that needs to be done whether the conditional use permit is granted or not. Regardless, that needs to happen.
no, conditional use is first because it's the right to use the property in this manner. The condition of the property is what's governed by the site plan. And so without the right to use the property, there's no need to do a site plan review or approval because, and that's the topic of tonight's discussion is, has there been substantial action under your original conditional use permit to warrant an extension? And without that extension, then the use is no longer permissible and the cars would have to be removed.
Okay. So I guess I'm not understanding. If the cars need to be removed, the cars can be removed at any time if that's what needs to happen. It's just they can't be removed when the road's under construction. I don't know if that's complete yet. I haven't driven by there.
That road's been accessible during the entire construction season.
It's accessible, but it's messy.
It is messy. UDOT's done a decent job at making sure all businesses had business access.
Yeah.
So it's been accessible. So again, the removal of the cars is just an extension of the of whether or not the use is granted. So you applied for a use that's not a specifically permitted use in this zone, which is retail auto sales. The commission has the ability to grant that use, the permission for that use conditionally based on certain factors. That was given. And so the use based on an extension would be still permissible. Now, to actually operate a business, you need a business license.
Correct.
And in order for that to take place, you have to work backwards to get the building up to code and the site up to code. That's the discussion tonight. What the commissioners are discussing with you is this idea of whether or not they would extend the ability for the property to be used as a retail auto sales or not, based on any substantial action that you've made under the original approval.
So I guess my question is I don't even know how to word it. So if the conditional use permit is pulled, then we need to start over, in essence, or that's not even an option. He can't have a car lot there.
That's right.
So would it be better to be a vacant lot than have a business there where you're getting taxpayers' money? Forgive me, I don't know if that's an ignorant question.
Even at present, we're not, there's no revenue.
Well, he's paying taxes on the property. He owns
through
it. He's
ownership,
doing that.
but Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
would that would continue.
But,
That
I
would still
mean-
continue.
Well, of course it would. But car sales,
But the
It's
car
a good-
sales are now of benefit to Roy City and have,
but that's not what he wants. He doesn't want to be in Roy City. He wants to be in Riverdale City, which is why he bought the property.
But the compliance issues along the way,
I understand.
that is a concern.
I understand.
Because if we make stipulations for just one business, all the car dealerships is gonna comply with the same
I
rules and
understand.
regulations. That's where we're at with this situation, not being in compliance and following through what has been explained that needs to happen going forward.
I understand.
That's the concern.
And I can get that. And I'd love to say that, I'm here for a reason.
Right.
And it may not be good enough. I understand that. But he clearly needed help. And that's why he asked me for help, which we want to expedite this. And he wants to do business here. I don't get paid if it doesn't get done. And I want to get paid too. Let's be honest.
It's a compliance issue is what it is.
I agree.
And it's no more than, did the compliance, was the compliance met? And it's obviously not, it wasn't met. And you want it to get back on track, we understand that, and put everything behind us that's happened and get going again.
We just want to make it move forward so
But in that
it's benefit
process,
to you and us both.
right, but in that process, everybody has compliance and rules and regulations that has to be met along them steps, which was not met.
Understood.
For whatever the reasons, the old statement of he said, she said, it didn't happen. And there's documentation of that. For that, that's what I'm concerned about.
And
That
I
with the-
do feel like there has been, I agree 100%, but there is other conversations that's gone on with, I don't know who he worked with before you, I apologize. But there are emails saying that there's clearly, there's some misunderstanding, clearly. And when he thought the business license was approved, he thought it was good, at this moment, it's like, what do we have to do? What do we have to do to make it right so that we can get on track?
but even with that business license was approved and revoked, when we did the conditional use permit, we explained to him at that point in time that he needed a business license. So that was more past history down the road. And so
Is there any way to make it right going forward? If the conditional maybe I'm misunderstanding, but if the conditional permit is denied, he can't ever have the car lot there? Or can we get back on track so that eventually he can?
The use of a car lot that was applied for and approved has expired. If the extension is not granted, then that use is not permitted conditionally because the conditions weren't met.
When
But-
does it expire?
It expired in February.
Expired
Which is why we
February
came in-
27th.
We did come in and try to get it resolved
Sure.
before it expired. That was done beforehand. It wasn't like it got canceled and then we come back. No, we were trying to get it done beforehand.
And that specific list was provided in January, and
Correct.
and that's where we haven't seen any progress.
And that's what
Not to say
concerns
that-
me,
Still haven't.
is
Do
that-
we need to get Granger? I mean, I don't even know if I can. I mean, we have,
And
there's checks that have been cashed. There's engineering that's been done. I don't know why you don't have it, but I can find out in 24 hours why.
even if we were to table this and to return, that's adding an additional 2 weeks in delay for you to be able to meet the August 27 deadline. To even clarify what did or didn't happen, what documentation we do or don't have, that, I mean, you could still work to get a site plan and get that, but all of this just seems to be a continuous churn, and given that the information was given again in January and nothing happened until April, I mean, there's 3 months right there. And
lot
that's
has happened
the
since
same
then.
time frame that we're looking to try and get all of this completed and pushed and done. And from observation, it just raises doubts
I
as to
understand.
whether that can happen. So, I mean, we could table it as a possibility to clarify some of this, to see if there was any merit.
I would say, as you consider the tabling, that any documents, and Ms. Shorten's correct, I have received from her emails of documents that were provided to the city before, a geotech on the adjacent property, this survey by Gardner Engineering. But as we speak about the process, all of those things are irrelevant because they're not a site plan submission.
Right.
So yes, we have some information about the geotech of the neighboring property and what the existing conditions look like after they were illegally built, but it doesn't constitute a site plan, and nor would it now. So even if they were packaged correctly and a fee paid, they would not constitute a site plan now. So there has to be steps made, and it sounds like there has been some discussion, but there's no evidence to me that steps have been made to go from that point to a formal site plan that meets all of our requirements. Could we get there in 3 months? Maybe. I've seen easier things.
Even having that site plan, if they have everything prepared and ready to go and Gardner hasn't pushed it across for whatever reasons, I don't know whether that 2 weeks to review and to be able to bring this up would have any bearing, because now you're looking at, instead of 12 weeks, you're down to 10 to try and get everything
Right.
finalized.
If it doesn't get approved, does he even have a shot to open a business?
I can't speak in terms of, what's legal and what's not. But as Joe's Car Connection, that was granted as a conditional use permit for Joe's Car Connection. And at this point,
Can he reapply for that?
No.
under the statutes, he can't.
So it
So-
sounds like, again, forgive my ignorance, Joe messed up. And he clearly realized that he messed up. And he asked for help. Which I know you don't see it. I mean, maybe the emails can account for something. We are doing since I've stepped in, I have called people, I have bugged you, the engineer, I've yelled at the geo guys, I've called and yelled at contractors, why didn't you do these permits? There's a huge effort. And I'm not a person, which doesn't matter, credit doesn't matter, I know, but you get the job done, which is why I'm here, is we're getting the job done. If I need to get, I mean, I can show you the checks that have been cashed, that contractors have been paid and engineers have been paid and complaints have been made. Why did it get done wrong? But yes, it's only a couple months and you haven't seen it yet. But if I have to have Granger call you tomorrow in a 3-way call and make it happen, it will happen.
It's even.
It sounds like
again,
that's not good
To
enough.
my thinking, contractors who are in the business of developing property and building know and understand what cities require, as do the engineers. And
But we've all hired a bad contractor that doesn't follow compliance, and you hope that they do, but they don't. He made a mistake.
And unfortunately, that's an issue between you and the contractor, of which we have no control over.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes a third party issue, because you're trying to communicate with the city and meet the city's requirements to be able to develop a property in which to engage in business. And then you've made an agreement with the contractor to meet those requirements.
Right.
So it's a pass-through conduit, but
And since
It's
January,
just-
I've
yeah.
been trying my darndest to get it caught up. I mean, I
and,
beg to consider to let me try to finish this job.
and so who would you get as a contractor to?
We're working with Granger, and I specifically told him he needed to have 3 contractors on hand so we can get the work done. So they said that they have subcontractors that we can
Even
work
at this
with the
point, there
engineering
isn't
company.
an agreement for a contractor
There's
to.
a contract signed with Granger, and the check has been cashed.
Is Granger the general
Communicated with the
contractor?
city?
No, no, he has, I don't know the name of the guy. The engineer with Granger, we signed a contract with him. He has a subcontractor that's going to spec the work after you approve it, and it will be done.
Who's
He's
drawing the drawings to submit for this?
Granger.
Granger or Gardner?
Gardner,
Gardner.
yes. They're doing it. And they have been paid already.
Are they communicating with the city at all?
They have not yet,
So we
but
have a
I need to find out why.
Well, that's the communication. He's following the law. Granger hasn't communicated to the city.
The check cleared 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's between you
I know.
and, but
I
I'm just
know.
saying, he's coming from a compliance situation, and we are.
Right.
From a city standpoint, it's not in compliance.
I understand that, but he needs the time. He said that it would be, you guys would have your drawings by the end of May, before the end of May.
But what you should have had him do, in my opinion, is communicate what they're doing with the city in compliance with where you're at, which never happened. It's like they're doing their own thing and keeping you guys involved, but the city's not involved.
I agree.
And that's wrong. You can't go forward doing it that way and expect compliance.
I agree.
And that's where the concern is.
I know. But they weren't hired in time. You know, when
Right,
I came
right.
in January, I hired him in March.
Right.
The
But
check
from-
cleared in April. It takes
From
time.
day one, communication wasn't evolving.
Correct. I
And
agree.
it got worse as time went on and to where it's at today, which is totally past compliance.
So there's a couple of other things that
We want to get.
I factored into my recommendation to you all. One is the discussions we had in January about the need to come before you and grant and seek a request or an extension. So I was hoping by communicating that in January, knowing that that was going to happen sometime after January, that the other steps that that are necessary to meet the conditions of the permit would have been actionable between January and now. And so that would have been something that would have totally changed my mind, right? So if you know that you're going to come before the commission and ask for a request, you would think that everything that would be necessary to put you in a great position would be done to the best ability. And so had that been the case, I think I would make a different recommendation. In April, when Joe finally came in, there were some technicalities with some of the documentation that you sent me, mostly the agent authorization, to where you had double signed.
I double signed it.
And
Correct.
we communicated that to him. So technically, we don't have an agent authorization for you to speak on behalf of Joe.
He told me to come here today and sign it here,
Right.
which is why I'm here.
But I talked to him middle of April when he was in the office, and he signed it on the spot. We notarized it on the spot, but we needed it correctly filled out by you. And so again, knowing that you were coming here tonight on the 13th,
I have an email from him stating, or he called me on the phone, said he just left here, that you were requesting a meeting for the 6th. I showed up here at the 6th, and he said to be here early. But then there was an email that came back that said come through on the 13th. And I was told that I would get sign that here. I didn't know that I needed to come here before then to sign it.
so I originally said that this request would be scheduled for the 6th.
Correct.
That was corrected 10 minutes after I sent that email
Yeah, he didn't.
for the 13th. And so he must have failed to, because
He told me on the 6th. I was here on the 6th at 5:30, and I was here today at 5:30.
unfortunately, that was correct. So again, my recommendation, and then I'll shut up to you, is based on the fact that since the conversations in January, where all of this has been spelled out specifically both to Mr. Gracie and Ms. Shorten, and there hasn't been any demonstrable evidence that that action has been taken, even to the point where we needed an agent authorization signed and submitted to us, which is the easiest part of this whole thing. That's what led me to believe that if this conditional use was extended, then it would be difficult to think that anything would change.
I respectfully disagree on the basis of there's a lot that has gone on. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not getting paid for this. I am here helping. I get paid when it's done. If it doesn't get done, nothing happens. I'm a mom. I have a full-time job. I work with other cities. I'm a grandma. Like, I'm doing this off because I want to see this succeed. He wants to live and work in Riverdale. We want you guys to profit from those sales. He wants out of Roy because we all know what the construction like is there. He just wants a home. And that's why he called me in December, and that's why I was here in January. That's why I'm here today. There's no benefit to me. I don't make anything from this. I just want to see it succeed.
Well, I think you came in pretty late to the game
Unfortunately.
because he hired you started helping him in January, but the permit, our conditional use, was up in the end of February. You hired a contractor in March. So if we're following just what's up here, unless there's substantial action within that 1 year, which was the end of February. And that's kind of where I'm kind of stuck, because all of this happened before you came on. None of it was done. There's been no substantial action until after that permit, that the 1 year was already up. And I know you came in, and I feel for you. You're coming in late to this game trying to fix things. But, we have to follow the code and the law that says unless there's a substantial action, and then, we can extend for 6 months under exceptional circumstances. I don't know that that's being met.
At least not communicating to the city behind the scenes, which is
Nothing
always
we've been able to observe.
right. Because I can tell you right now that if it's communicated to the city will tell you the steps to proceed. And obviously, if they're not hearing anything from any business, that puts a big red flag.
I understand. I feel like this was all for naught. I feel like there was false hopes given in January, which it's like you do all this work for nothing. And now he can't even have a business there at all? That seems ridiculous.
Well,
You'd rather him just be gone?
In January, the steps were reiterated, and
I've done them.
it's still drug incredibly slowly through, to which there's not been anything that we can see of significance that shows the intent to really get after this. And
It feels like there's something was personal before I got here. It feels like I wish you could see all the emails. It feels like he's not wanted there by the emails and the respondents. And it feels like that all this money is for nothing. Like, we just paid all these engineers that now it doesn't matter if they get the job done, it doesn't do any good because he can't be there.
And that's a difficult situation because the city laid out all the expectations. We gave that to him in February of 24. And yet, again, hats off to you. You had an incredibly difficult job to take care of, to try and remedy this. But from February to December, there was negligible action that we could see that was making any steps to finalize and improve that to where we could move forward. And
Is there anything that he can do that meets in your parameters? I know that we're requesting an extension. I know that this is can we pay a fee? Can we pay a fine? Is there something that we can do to give us a little bit more time to prove to you that we're serious?
codes, as far as expiration, grants a maximum extension 6 months under exceptional circumstances.
Which gives us till August.
But we don't, I don't see that we've met that bar. There's still a considerable gap that shows exceptional circumstances. It just seems like it was a passage of time, and now we're at the deadline, and we want to make sure that this gets taken care of so we don't have to apply again, or so that we don't lose the opportunity.
That's not
I
at all
just
what
don't have
happened.
anything that shows exceptional circumstances that's limited your success with this. Again, that's why we have a commission of, normally we would have 7, but we've got 5 here tonight, which allows us to be able to take action. And so you've got 5 independent persons that are listening to the facts and are trying their best to be able to be fair to all parties, one, the city and the citizens, and to Joe and yourself in being able to accomplish this.
Have you all been here for a really long time? Like, have you been in Riverdale City as commissioners for a long time?
Lived in Riverdale for 44 years.
Okay, this means, it probably doesn't mean anything, but I'm going to throw it out there as a Hail Mary.
Okay.
Okay, the Utah Military Academy, when that started, are you familiar with that
Lived
process?
right by it.
Okay, I was the parent in charge. I was the one that created the Community Service Day for 4 years. I was on that committee to make it happen. And I am telling you, if you were here, you saw it. We did amazing things the first 4 years that they were there. I was the parent in charge. I was the one that did it. I worked with Major Workman. And I'm telling you, if there's anyone that can get it done, I am the person that can get it done. Riverdale City is near and dear to my heart. That is why Joe called me. We want to make improvements. And if my character can stand up for anything, that's my Hail Mary. I am seriously the lead head on it. You can call Major Workman on it. You can look at your permits. My name is attached to every one of them. So call it a Hail Mary. If there's anything that can be said, if there is something that I can do, I will do it. Just tell me. I'll make it happen. That has nothing to do with Joe. That has everything to do with who I am.
And hats off to you for what you've done in the past and what you've been able to accomplish. Joe is the business, and Joe is the responsible party. And we had hoped that we would see greater action from Joe. I think at this point, unless commissioners, you have other questions or comments?
I mean, this is hard because, you know, I want to say let's table it and see what can get done, but then you could be spending more money for something that doesn't happen in time for us to even, you know, consider extending you to August. Like this is really tough. I mean, certainly we are all for small businesses, and we like to have businesses in Riverdale. It helps bring, revenue in for the city. You know, if I just wish that something had been done in the whole year that he had this conditional use permit, but he didn't even submit a site plan that we
He
can
did,
approve.
it just wasn't right.
Yeah.
And there's no chance of starting over to show you that it can be done.
Your only chance is if we were to grant the extension and then stuff happens in the next couple months. But I think our concern is that the history hasn't shown that that's likely to happen.
The only thing that I can think to recommend, as to where do we go from here if this is in fact denied, would be for Joe to consult with an attorney and say, okay, is there any other options that I have? Because the conditional use permit is basically a one and done. We weren't able to meet the deadline. I want to do this. Under the law, what do you know that I have options to pursue? I don't know what those may or may not look like, if that is even possible. But that's something that I don't have an answer for. And that's the only thing, that's the only type of hope that I can present, is that maybe I don't know what type of attorney that would be, whether it's, a business law attorney would be able to identify some other avenue that permits him to be able to move forward again.
If you would consider tabling it for 2 weeks, let me prove to you what I can get done in 2 weeks. And if I can't get it done in 2 weeks, then we walk away with nothing. We'll just
What
say
are you
we're done.
saying you would get done in 2 weeks?
I'll get the drawings to you. I'll get them on the phone and get it over. I'll get whatever you want him to have done, it'll get done.
But then it's no longer 12 weeks, it's now 10 weeks to be able to finalize and complete everything.
Again, if there is a will, I will get it done.
But how do we modify the rules?
I'm not asking you to modify the rules.
No, that's my question, is from our standpoint, how can we legally do that and comply with the city ordinances and rules for anybody?
Well, I can tell you all the things that went wrong, obviously.
We understand, that happened. But I'm just saying, we cannot bend the rules for specific situations.
I understand.
A rule's a rule for any company that comes into Riverdale.
But any company that goes into, I'm not just saying Riverdale, like if a company's
city.
going out of business, they have to hire somebody to prevent bankruptcy. That's what he's doing.
And he didn't comply with the people that he brought on board to comply with the city's responsibilities and laws and ordinances.
Which he realized after the fact and asked for help.
I know, but that time's now expired.
Not in purpose.
I
We
know
were
that.
here.
I know, not in purpose, but by law.
But we
and
were
ordinance.
here before the expiration trying to fix it. We were here.
But the site plan, the simple steps of the process was not completed in time.
And even at that, measurable progress since then, when you were here, still has been negligible as far as anything that we've seen. And it just raises some clouds of doubt as to whether we have enough time, that you're being able to accomplish this. You've done some great things in the past with the military academy, but based on observable action in the past, it just raises that cloud of wonder and doubt as to whether that's really going to be able to happen. Because Joe's obviously the main driving force. He's got you running point on this, but it still falls on Joe
I
to
understand.
take care of, make sure that everything's happening for you to be successful in accomplishing this. Commissioners, any further discussion that we want to have on this?
I just think it's sad to have him leave. I just think that's terrible.
So do we, if it comes to that,
It
because
sounds like there's no other option. That's what sucks.
but as a business person, people in business, it's their duty and responsibility to make sure that they understand what's going to make them successful.
And he has said to you, to the previous people, he has made it very clear he did not understand. He hired somebody because he didn't understand. He got taken advantage of. Now he's hired someone new. We're on track. We are on track. If there's any options, it will be fulfilled.
But the agent form, that was informed in January?
Yeah, so that was the first step for Ms. Shorten to actually represent Joe on these matters. And so that was filled out by her.
incorrectly
But it was
filled out.
incorrect. Between the time it was noted that it was incorrect till April, nothing really happened. When Joe showed up in April as a result of the code enforcement call,
and that's
he
where
was going to
it's-
correct it, but I haven't heard from him.
And that's where it seems that action is created, is when the city reaches out and says, okay, we got a problem, here's where you're at, it needs to be fixed. It doesn't seem that there's been anything
But the city didn't
observable.
reach out.
It doesn't appear proactive. It seems more reactive once the city steps in.
I don't know that the city actually stepped in. I came in January, which was, he called me in December. There was all the holidays. I came in to the city in January.
That's true. We didn't reach out in January when
I came to
Ms. Shorten
them.
came. There was, like I said, I was here in March of 24, so a month after the conditional use permit was granted. And between March and January, I had no correspondence. But the January correspondence was unsolicited by the city.
Okay.
Is it normal that we don't reach out to them prior to their deadline?
No, we don't manage people's permits once they're issued. That would be burdensome. We're obviously trying to be helpful, and I think our code is helpful, understanding that there are exceptions and certain things that happen, which is why extensions are granted and those kind of things. And I believe that the fact that we're here tonight, even after the actual expiration, shows that we're willing to try to accommodate. Had there been something done between January and now, I think it would have been a lot easier.
Well, commissioners, where are we?
I think there's a motion to be made.
Okay.
Second.
Well,
We gotta find out.
you can't second if a motion hasn't been presented.
I'll make a motion to deny, unfortunately, the bad situation that you've been put in for Joe's car connections. I think there was substantial time to prove it, and it was denied. It was delayed and not came forth for communication purposes, which hurt Joe at the end of the day. And I deny the permit.
Okay, so we have a motion. Any discussion on the motion?
I have a question on the process, because I think we have to vote on this motion before we can throw out a different motion. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Unless there's not a second, then the
You can
motion
do
will die.
I think you can make a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
Yeah, I mean,
We didn't make up the words.
I can't remember the exact term on it, but I know that there is, amendments to a motion can be presented. And if such are presented, the original person making the motion can agree or disagree with that amendment. So I don't know whether that applies here for what you're proposing.
Okay.
Also, like I said, if there's no second, the motion just dies and you would just have to make a new motion. I don't know if you want to count preemptive second.
Oh, well, second, I was gonna second his motion, so.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion before we take a vote?
I just have one comment. I was at this meeting when we first came in. And I don't know if I can say this correctly because my terminology isn't the way as well, but I thought Joe came in kind of flippant. I don't know how, just said he was going to do what he wanted to do and it didn't matter what we told him he had to do. And that was my opinion at the time. But we granted this, but I just felt like he was going to do it regardless of what the Riverdale City said.
Adamant.
Yeah, and you guys weren't here. Were you here at that time? You were here.
I was here, but
But that's how I felt.
I don't know that would apply to the motion for what
I'm
we're
just saying
doing.
that I'm not sure Joe was really on board with all of it at the time.
If it makes you feel any better, he asked me ahead of time if he could not attend because he knows that his mouth gets him in more trouble, which is why he's not here. If that makes you feel any better.
Thank you. That's just what that was my feelings. I just was.
He says that he can get himself into trouble unintentionally, which is why I'm here solo.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have,
I don't have
Defending
that.
him, so.
so we have a motion and a second. Michelle, would you poll the commissioners, please?
Am I allowed to appeal later?
We can talk about that after the.
Okay, sorry.
Commissioner Nye?
Dina,
So, yes to the motion?
yes.
Commissioner Bothorpe?
Yes.
Commissioner Henstra?
No.
Commissioner Polson?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes. So 4 of 7, so the motion would pass then. Okay. So, and then,
So yes, there is an appeal process. We have what's called an appeal authority. So within 30 days of tonight's action, you can apply for the appeal. I believe there's like a $400 application fee, but that's refunded to you if this decision is overturned. If this decision is upheld, then that fee would stand. It's an individual, and so there's some paperwork and things. I can send you the code reference so you can look at that and follow through with that. Generally speaking, they just look at whether or not the decision that was made was outside of the bounds of the code. So it's just looking at the appropriateness of the action tonight. There is a way to apply for special circumstances. I'm not quite sure if this meets those that criteria, I'd have to reread the code. I haven't read it for a while, but I'll send you the email for the code. It's on you to make the appeal. I can help you through the process, but you would have to fill out all the paperwork.
Can I put Joe's a pain in the butt? Is that enough granted?
But again, I just want to reiterate that I think tonight's activity with you is representative of good faith for trying to move this along. And if we do anything further, we really do need that agent authorization form, because technically speaking, you're not in a position to speak for Joe at this point.
Right. And I was here early to sign that. That was my impression. But if
Well,
I got
he
here
has
early,
it.
I could do
No, I
that.
have it.
No,
Oh, you
it's
have
in
it?
the office. He said it was
Okay,
left in
great.
the office
Just
for
need
me
her
to
to
sign
sign it.
before.
Got it. Okay. Let's do that, and then you'll be okay.
Thank you. It really was
And then
here early to
the
do that.
cars are supposed to be removed, right? They are not supposed to be on the property.
That's right. So let's talk about that. So we're talking about use, not operation of the site. So the use as a retail car facility, retail sales of automobiles, is not permitted. So anything that's related to the sales of automobiles, the presence of autos, the marketing of sales of autos, all that has to cease and desist immediately, because it's an illegal use. And so we probably won't do anything in terms of code enforcement until you go through the appeal process, just again as a sign of kind of good faith. And so if the appeal is going to be something that you do, you'll want to make sure you do that within that window. I think it's 30 days, but double check the code. We'll stay any enforcement activity, but if the appeal is not applied for within that 30 days, then it's just a code enforcement activity at that point, which nobody really wants. So I would encourage you to appeal, see what if you're going to appeal, see what the decision of that is. If this decision is upheld, then I would recommend that you immediately remove the illegal use.
Okay.
Mr. Cooper, are we the ones that would change the decision?
No.
Commission.
Yeah, I was going to say that would probably be good to know who reviews that to make that determination.
It's a single individual who is our appeal authority. And so the application would be made, justification under the criteria would be presented, and if that individual felt that your decision tonight was contrary to code or to any of the other criteria, then he can overturn it. If not, he can uphold it. But you have no further action
Okay.
as of tonight.
And how soon can you get me the information?
I'll send that to you tonight. It's just a code reference.
And then he can request a new application process for a different type of business, but not a car dealership.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I shook my head too soon. Right, so in the entire zone, this particular use is conditional, right? And so because you weren't granted conditional use or an extension of the conditional use that was granted, then that particular use is not permitted. But other uses that are permitted are available, and any other conditional uses can be applied for. But in both cases, you're going to be right back in the same position, because based on the use, not every single use, but most uses are still going to require site improvements, and so you're going to be right back in the same position.
Yeah, but what I'm wondering is if we apply, again, I apologize, I know this is so much time for you guys. If we get it correctly, could he reapply as start from scratch as truck sales, not Joe's Car Connection, but something else? Like, could that be an option?
I would recommend that you seek legal advice for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something, that's kind of what I alluded to earlier, that there may be other avenues, but I have no idea what that, to consult with a business law.
Is he
attorney
allowed
would
to
probably-
sell the property?
Oh yeah, his property rights are not diminished here. It's just the use that is granted via the zoning code.
Okay. It's not great, but it's what we have to deal with, right?
Good luck.
Thank you for your
All the
effort.
best to you.
It's too bad he didn't hire you a year ago.
I wish. Darn it.
Thank you.
Can I sign that before I leave?
It's upstairs, I gotta make sure this all
Thank you.
over and stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you wanna just write whatever, but I'll be out.
Okay, item F of our agenda, comments from the Planning Commission, city staff. Any comments to be made? Okay, then,
Chair, may I ask about your no vote?
I just wanted to allow her an opportunity to give it one more chance. I was hoping we would just be able to table it for a couple weeks and give her an opportunity. I mean, I don't feel like there has been any compliance, and it feels like she's trying to make an effort, but she's getting thwarted.
Yeah.
I hate to just ruin a business without like one more chance.
I guess the comment that I make is that the lack of trust left me real quick of what he was gonna do. That's important to me, trust. I don't trust it.
Well, he came in with the very, like Wanda said, I know everything. I'm gonna do what I want attitude, which hitting the road running, that's not the way you start in front of anybody.
but even with that, we clarified and explained, yes, you can do this.
Exactly.
No, you can't do that.
Explain the steps and the
Yeah,
process.
And I think we can agree, we saw that coming. And so we made an effort to be crystal clear.
Yep.
I thought about a tabling option similar to what was discussed. The reason why I didn't recommend that is because tabling it in the act of non-compliance. So had the cars not been there and been there for a year, whatever it was, had it been a vacant site and he was still trying to get to compliance so he could use it, then I think that's different than being in a position where he's using the site in a non-compliant way and then granting a table.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah. So if there was some indication that he could remove the cars and return the site to its vacant use and then get some kind of a reprieve on the time, it still would put him with limited time on the back end, but that could have been an alternative. But that was never discussed with us when we talked about this, and so that persistence of noncompliance was the issue for me.
Good faith effort towards the city has really hobbled him to where we've had to make this unfortunate decision.
Well, you know, a year ago, when we had that meeting, we knew out on the website, there was a website that had his name and in Riverdale and that address
Yeah,
to sell.
that's right.
To sell trucks.
Yep.
And you know, you heard her say, we're not selling anything there, we're not selling anything. And we asked him bluntly, he said, well, that was accidentally put out there by somebody, a secretary or somebody, and, but it was still out there. Well, why don't you take it down? It's not true. And he kept saying, it's gonna come down, it's gonna come down. Well, even the building still has trucks for sale. So they're still advertising, and he was so, I left here with a really a bad taste in my mouth. I am sorry, but I try to think the best of people, but I thought, you're not, you really don't care what we say, you're gonna do what you wanna do.
And I believe, even though you voted no, Commissioner Henstra, what you said prior to that, I think is the ultimate finding of fact, and that is substantial action within that conditional use year period. The argument tonight was substantial action, at least in their minds, happened since January to now. but was there substantial action within that period of February to February? And does that demonstrate an exceptional situation? And I believe you've vocalized that very well.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn.
No. I wish somebody would have spoken up more so I wasn't yammering all night.
When I seen that on the agenda, I went, oh no, oh no.